Hello, Jimjamatic here. Welcome to not an episode review. It is not an episode review. This is a little special one-off podcast I've decided to do because, I haven't seen that much Battlebots. I've seen a bit of it, and I would be the worst person to be talking about Battlebots with. And I'm joined by three very, very special guests who have come to join me today. Guest number one, you know him as the Hardcore Kid. He also does the Hardcore podcast and one and a half of the regular guys on it. It is Brandon.
Who you calling special?
No, don't worry. I'm not being special in that way. Don't you worry. Guest number two is the second half of the regulars of the Hardcore podcast, and has also been the first person to start promoting my videos on the Facebook page, which I'm eternally grateful for. And it is Nate.
That's OtakuNate to you, James.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I forgot.
I do videos, but my output is so slow you wouldn't know it.
And our final, last but not least, third guest number three is him as a live reviewer for Robot Wars, Battlebots, and Robotica, and in the future maybe Techno Games. He's reached just over 1,000 subscribers and getting to 1,100. It is Mystrsyko2.
Yeah, I'm here too, I guess.
So this is not a disclaimer before we start talking. This is not going to be a which series is better type thing, because let's face it, both series have advantages and disadvantages. Some in more areas than others, but that is what we're doing. And before we really start talking about specifics, I was quite curious. I'll start with Psycho then. When it comes to experience with Battlebots and Robot Wars, particularly with Robot Wars, until the live reviews, how much knowledge did you know about Robot Wars beforehand?
So, my knowledge for Robot Wars was a little bit of YouTube comments over the previous decade or so, and a little bit of Extreme Warriors that I remember seeing as a kid, and that was about it. I was vaguely aware robots like Razor and Hypnodisc and Pussycat and stuff existed, but I didn't know anything besides people get really mad about them in the comments.
particularly Razor. For some reason, the fanboys seem to be very loud of Razor. Actually, how about Brandon? What about Robot Wars for you?
I started watching, the first episode I ever saw of Robot Wars was the Annihilator in Extreme Warrior Season 1.
Ah, that was good.
And since then, I was watching a few episodes. They had like various series like Extreme Warriors, Grand Champions, which was basically Series 4 edited down to 30 minutes with Stefan Frank commentary and WWE's China in front of a green screen. And
I remember that.
I started becoming a fan, and I guess after watching those series, I decided I wanted to build my own heavyweight, but I couldn't afford it. And then, of course, Robot Wars and Battlebots ended. So I started getting into. I started watching episodes online of Robot Wars, BattleBots, and Robotica, and I was really becoming a fan. And since then, I've built a few bots of my own. They're not like big heavyweights. They're like little ant weights and beetle weights, which only weigh like 1 pound and 3 pounds. And I've gone to a bunch of events and won a lot of stuff, but I still really enjoy Robot Wars and BattleBots, and I'm happy that both series have come back, and I'm happy that there's going to be now a 10th series of Robot Wars. I'm still waiting for season 3 of BattleBots. # season 3. Do it, ABC.
It's kind of,
I respectfully will come back.
I mean, they confirmed Robot Wars like Series 10 way before Battlebot Series 3, which must be kind of a bit frustrating when it's been it's been unknown for so long, and yet Series 10's like, during the middle of Series 9, we confirmed it.
In the middle, they confirmed it right after the first episode.
Yeah, and the deadline to put your heavyweights in is actually over now, so yeah, that's how far ahead we are. But and Nate, same with you. What are your experiences with Robot Wars?
Well, my experience with Robot Wars was unique because I actually had, I want to say expanded cable, because we have Cablevision here in the tri-state area, which is, from my experience, way better than anything Comcast has ever put out. You're British, James. You wouldn't get that joke.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about.
But anyway, I digress. We had a little network called Tech TV, and well, with a name called Tech TV, you got exactly what you got. You know, shows about tech support. They had, like, I believe, a tech-themed chat show, and their flagship show was actually a video game review show called X-Play, but they also ran episodes of Robot Wars, the UK series. And I watched Nickelodeon Robot Wars when it was airing all the way back on Nick Gas, but my first real experience with Robot Wars on a came after I got home from school, and I was scrolling through the channels, and I'm like, oh hey, Robot Wars, I remember that show airing on Nickelodeon. Let's see what this is like. And the first episode of Robot Wars that I ever watched in full was the Extreme 2 Annihilator, which to this day is one of my favorite episodes of all time.
It's a very good Annihilator, I'll admit. It's weird because that's almost like right at the end of the original run, like starting off there. I mean, with Robot Wars, I started a lot more old school. Naturally, I started with Series 2 Heat B, which is Mace's Heat. That was the first Heat I ever saw back in I think it was '98. I think that Heat was. So I started all the way from there, and then I eventually just kind of watched Series 1 and carried on through this series. But when it comes to Battlebots, I only have ever seen, prior to watching the whole series on YouTube, I've only seen one episode, and for the life of me, I cannot remember what the robots were on it. It's really annoying me because I remember watching it, and I just remember getting really put off for some reason. I remember watching it because there's only 2 battles, and I thought I'm used to Robot Wars when there's like 6, 7 battles, or 5 or so per heat, and here, especially in Series 3 onwards, and here I was just like, there's 2 battles and loads of talking, and that's all I saw, so I just kind of didn't. I'm not watching this again. But
well, today you get 4 battles and even more talking. So
that's
there's been a lot of advancement.
There has. You get a few more battles at least, but I was just too used to Robot Wars' style, I guess, at the time. So I just thought to myself, oh, this is terrible, and didn't watch it. And then as YouTube came about and you can watch more episodes online, there's a thing called skipping ahead, so I can just skip through all the talking and all the failed comedy from the announcers. I can just skip to the main event. Well, let's see the 2 battles, and then get to the next episode, and then I didn't realize actually that most of the battles aren't actually shown. There's loads of they don't show all the battles, which it kind of confused me because I was like,
yeah, it's like I think that they have that there's like I don't know, maybe 300 battles a series, and they only show like I don't know 20 or 30 of them.
all right. I mean, also Robot Wars we pretty much see them all. The only time they didn't do that was for that one-off grudge match special with the different weight classes. They just kind of briefly said, "Oh, these happened," and then the winner was there or something, and then that was basically it for the most part, apart from the super heavyweights. But yeah, so that's kind of my experience with Battlebots. It was just nothing much really with Battlebots. I mean, also even then, I'm not a big expert on Battlebots, which is why me just talking about it by myself would be completely pointless because I wouldn't be as in depth at it compared to Robot Wars naturally. But speaking of robots, obviously the most important thing are the robots themselves, and there particularly is a massively, especially nowadays, we look at the modern Battlebots compared to modern Robot Wars. There seems to be a stark difference between the different types of robots you tend to get, because unlike in the new series Robot Wars, we get a lot of spinners, spinner heavy. I mean, I don't know what you three think, but what would you say like the difference in variety maybe between the 2 different series would be?
Well, there's I know because ever since Robot Wars went off the air, they had to ban the spinners because the arenas that they couldn't find any strong enough arenas for them. So, I think in terms of destructive robots and spinners, I think BattleBot spinners have much more destructive capability, but the UK ones, I think now that they've got the spinners. They are destructive, but I think there is much more. They're not quite as powerful as say Tombstone or Invader, but I think I am happy that they brought them back, but I don't know, but they're still I don't know really.
It's a difficult one because I mean the one thing I would say that in terms of at least the names, I think America does come up with better names than Britain overall. I mean, while we were setting up here, we were just looking at all the old names and stuff, and again, as I saw commented the fact it seemed like they had come up with a name first and then just come up with a robot to work around that name second. Which
Just if I could inject myself for a minute here,
Without being interrupted.
there was a robot called the Wedginator or something like that. It was a spinner.
seriously?
Yes, I'm not kidding.
Oh my god, that's brilliant.
Makes sense.
I mean, the most wacky we get over here is things like jellyfish or, well, I think probably just jellyfish. Really, is probably the wackiest name we've had over here, probably. But
I'd go with Miss Nightshade.
oh, Miss Nightshade. Have you seen that hit yet, Mystrsyko2?
I have not actually. I was going to record that right after this.
Oh, you have a treat then, because Miss Nightshade is a very interesting robot, to say the least.
I think I get the concept from photos and the teasers from the other episodes, but at the same time, I really want to see the details.
It's a very odd design. I mean, one thing I think that I guess the lack of spinners in the live circuit in Britain has sort of added to British robots is the fact that we tend to try. Obviously, flippers are still the biggest thing probably in Robot Wars. I mean, that classic just the wedge with a flipper on it is probably the most standard Robot Wars type robot. But then you'll get things like jellyfish and also Miss Nightshade. And these are kind of robots you don't really know how to fight properly. And one thing I've noticed, particularly in before Battlebots, when you got to see all the kind of like the where Robot Wars sort of started, you do see some really. I mean, one of my favourite ones from Battlebots was Dr. Inferno Jr.?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. I love the little guy on it, little robot thing. It's. I mean, obviously they competed in Robotica, and it was just the base play. But without it, it wasn't interesting. But I mean, the one thing I think some people have problems with Battlebots or Robot Wars is the fact that apparently I don't know if this is true or not, but there's a lot of sponsorship stuff.
Yeah. BattleBots has a lot of sponsors.
And
Sometimes you see like a lot of stickers all over all the bots, like FingerTech or NPC or something, and they're basically it's either they're supplying parts or they're sponsoring the bots.
I was wondering that because that's a lot. There's a lot of sponsorship going on in BattleBots, and in a way, it does kind of eliminate the sort of anyone can go out and build it type mentality on the main series anyway. But I don't know what you guys think about that. I mean,
Well, if I can I suggest like the types of robots you see,
Mhm.
because you kind of nailed it with the whole diversity. Because you look at, if you go to Team Nightmare's website, which is what I'm looking at now, and you see all the sponsorships, you do get a sense that most of the people who build these things are pros. You know, they can get sponsors and whatnot. You didn't see that all that much in Robot Wars, and it's mostly due to like a regulation where you couldn't show ads on your robot or something.
yeah, it's true. Even to the point where they couldn't, like, with contracts, they couldn't have, like, because Carbide competed with Cobalt, which is a different robot, but is very similar design, and they couldn't obviously name it Carbide. And also, the Razor team have got Warhead, obviously, in America as well. And I mean, it comes down to like the robots you see in Robot Wars normally. Like you see things like Gabriel from last series, and
Yeah, and that's the other point that I want to make, because you know you look at all these robots on the Team Nightmare websites, and their designs are very not just professional but also very simple. You know, like box, spinner, wedge.
yeah,
Meanwhile,
Wedge.
you go to Robot Wars and you see like these crazy looking things, like, you know, the Plunderbird robots. You get Diator, Gabriel, Revenge of Trouble and Strife, Major Tom. You get all these. You get your standard boxes and wedges and flippers and axes and whatnot, but then you get like all sorts of unique designs where you either go, "What were they thinking?" or "Where did they come up with that?" I mean, Pussycat, for example, that is a design that I don't think would ever be replicated in any robot combat
I have
scenario.
I have actually seen like a sportsman featherweight that competed in Motorama a few times, and it looked exactly like Pussycat. It had the wheel set up and everything.
Well, even so, though, that sort of design, it's very much a Robot Wars thing, and a lot of the Robot Wars robots, both the good and bad, have this sort of built in someone's shed aesthetic to them. They don't look clean. They look very grungy in sorts. You get the sleek and polished ones like Mortis and Razor and Hypnodisc and what have you, but then you have the other end of the spectrum with things like, Stegosaurus, Roadblock, Killertron.
I agree.
Yeah,
I mean, what do you think, Mr. Psycho, about the about how the Robot Wars robots kind of look more unprofessional in the loose terms?
The interesting thing about it is BattleBots used to be like that when it was an open competition. You'd get a whole huge variety of strange and bizarre shapes and weapon types because it was cheap to throw a robot together for $1,000 and see if it works.
Someone entered like a Power Wheels thing on a piece of wood.
Really?
Yeah, and like there's a photo in the guide. Somebody entered a robot made out of Lego.
Stewbots.
Yes.
Yeah, that was like part of some comedy show, I guess. And they had two goofballs enter like a remote controlled car pulling a trailer full of Legos. Unfortunately, they couldn't get any reception through the Lexan, so it just stopped working. And then the Crusher just pushed it under the pulverizer, and it ended up in a million pieces.
Yeah, but BattleBots used to be like that, but the way that things kind of evolved in the time that the shows were off is the live events like Robo Games and such built bigger and stronger arenas, and so you got bigger and stronger spinners, and you needed better and better engineering and more money to be able to compete against these things, and it was kind of the opposite of the way that Robot Wars went. So now you see the modern show, and these are $20,000 machines that are being put into the arena, and you can't afford to try something new like you could with Robot Wars for a couple grand.
I mean, it's true. I mean, the most expensive robot in Series 9 was Rapid at 25 grand. And that was the exception. I mean, they lost. They got replaced by Jellyfish, which cost under £200, I believe. So, I mean, I think the cheapest robot is Jellyfish. I think it's either Jellyfish or Worm are the cheapest robots.
Frostbite.
Actually, yeah,
Frostbite.
Frostbite was pretty cheap as well. Yeah, but
£500.
well, Jellyfish cost less than 200, and I think Worm was all scrap stuff. So I don't know the exact. I don't know what the price that Worm cost, but I guess the whole point is that Robot Wars tends to. I mean, its whole origin was from the scrapyard. I mean, we kind of went over to America, saw how good America was when we want to do that, but then we came home and then made our first arena and everything out of scrap metal. I mean, all the house robots look like they're made out of like pieces of scrap, and there's sort of like that kind of build it up mentality that even though the robots are getting more, the armor's getting better, the robots are getting better, there are still these robots that want to come out here. Like you'll see it later on, Mystrsyko2. There's little cluster bots in the new heat, in the next heat as well, which are more durable than something like Gemini because they have all this massive armor on, but at the end of the day, they just kind of this outlandish cluster bot set, and you think in BattleBots nowadays it'll mostly just be like a spinner versus spinner, and then these kind of battles don't last very long. Whilst Robot Wars, there's a bit more. I guess there's a bit more kind of flair to some of the robots in Robot Wars. I guess that's probably the best way to describe it. It's hard to explain the difference really, but it just feels like Robot Wars went after both series ended. Both robot series went to a drastically different area. Like one went to kind of perfect the destruction and all the ingenuity, and the other ones kind of went to all this kind of flippers, and then the weird robots started appearing over time, and then you start getting things like Gabriel. So both series have definitely got their weird robots though, but what is a robot without the presenters? Because I'm just going to say out now, for the Robot Wars presenters in terms of BattleBots, I don't like these guys at all. Are they sports commentators? They sound like wrestling commentators. Are they just doing this and that's all they do?
Well,
Kenny Florian, the new BattleBots, he's a UFC fighter.
I'll explain it.
He has some experience in that field, but like usually he would cut a promo after a match, have a whole speech set up. So he's got that kind of stuff in there.
Doesn't
have no,
Chris do regular sports commentary too?
Yeah, the reboot has since ABC owns ESPN. They got some ESPN personalities, like the host of the new one, Samantha Ponder. She is now going to be presenting Saturday Night Football. No, or Sunday Night Football, I should say. Now that Chris Berman's gone.
All right. I thought they had something at least to do with sports. I mean, I don't know about what about the ones from the classic series, like those.
Sean Salisbury's also a sports commentator. Don't know where Bill and Tim are from. They got Bill Nye the
Science Guy.
Yeah, I think Bill Dwyer is a stand-up comic.
I was thinking. I mean, Bill Nye was the only one I could tolerate because it's Bill Nye. Come on.
Bill.
I mean, he's awesome, but I mean, when it came to presenters, I mean, it's kind of weird seeing that. It's that almost like. It's definitely more of a cultural thing because, like, when you look at Battlebots, it's very kind of tonight on Battlebots. Everything's like kind of like very like almost like they're gearing up for a boxing match. While in Robot Wars, it's sort of like Craig Child just walks out and it's just like, "You're right, just go say some stuff and then let's start." And even in the new series, Dara Breen is the only thing he does really is just say what the arena looks like and that's it, which I find really strange because he's a comedian. Yet all he does is talk about the arena. Like he doesn't really. I mean, he has funny stuff later on, but the one thing I did like about the new series, granted, was the fact that they had both the pit reporter and the presenter dual role. Like they both did, like, unlike in the other series where like you'd have some people would stay commentating and presenting, and some people would just be in the pits, and that's all you get. They actually do serve both roles, and I don't know whether you three think that's a better decision or not, having both of them as a presenter and as a pit reporter.
It seems all right. I mean, Dara, I like him on Mock the Week, but there are some times where he just kind of drones. So I think adding Angela Scanlon, she's a lot. She adds some liveliness to it. I don't really have much of a problem with the interchangeable roles because I think. Didn't BattleBots have interchangeable roles at one point? Or I know Robotica did. Like sometimes they'd have Dan Danknick, or they'd have the other girls there. So they were able to mix it up a bit.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I liked about the old series is that, this is one thing I liked more about Robo Wars and BattleBots. But when I was just initially watching them both online, was that when you compare someone like Philippa Forrester / Julia, whoever which series it is, or I forget what's the name of the person who used to do it on BattleBots? Was it a few people or was it just one person? I forgot.
It was a few people. They changed their pit presenter almost every season, to the point where I don't know who's who. But we'll get to the one when we talk about.
Oh yes.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was she the longest pit reporter?
I don't even know.
Carmen Electra, yeah, let's talk about her.
Go on then. Why not? We'll talk about her. I mean, I know a lot less about her than you obviously do, but do you not like her then, or?
Well, let me put it this way: Arthur Chilcott was on BattleBots. I don't know who he was with, but he said in a Facebook comment that Carmen Electra was one of the most annoying women he's ever spoken with.
All right.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just bring these reporters on just because they either have a cute face or a hot body. That's basically what they do sometimes. And Carmen Electra, I didn't even think she was all that hot, to be honest.
I think the only reason she got on was because she was on. I don't even remember what TV show it was at the time that she was famous for. She was basically only famous for her boobs at the time.
Yeah.
I think she had that one show on Comedy Central. What was it? Tripping the Rift or something? Or did that come afterward? I don't know.
I didn't even have Comedy Central back then because I don't know what was up with my cable because there were some channels I wouldn't get. I wouldn't get Comedy Central and I wouldn't get Cartoon Network. And then at some point they just randomly appeared. So I don't know.
I know nothing about Carmelite. I mean, I know the name, but that's pretty much all I know about her. I mean, when the episodes I ever saw her on, it never felt like. It just felt like she was there because she looked attractive. And it felt like that with most of the pit reporters in the classic BattleBots series. Well, the thing about Philippa Forrester is she... Well, I think she was definitely, at least... She wasn't, like, tremendously, like, out there pushing, showing off how attractive she was.
Although when she wore that corset in Series 5, which...
Oh, yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, she looks good in that, granted. But, the thing is, what I liked about her is that, granted, I don't think she really knew that much about the robots, like how they worked and all that, and I think Julie also didn't do that either, but the things the asset they both had was probably the fact that they were very enthusiastic about what they're talking about. Like, I never felt like, when Philippa was interviewing someone, I never felt like she was being fake about it, or kind of like just doing it because she has to be there. She actually felt like she actually wants to be there, and the Roboteers liked being around her, and she liked being around them, and it always felt good, and it was almost like how the difference between Jeremy Clarkson and Craig Charles. How Jeremy Clarkson would just sit there and be his sort of normal, sarcastic self, and then some people like might have lost, and he's still like, who cares, it's fine. Well, Craig Charles would at least try to actually engage with them, talking to them, and it never felt like at any point they wanted to walk away from Craig Charles because they didn't want to talk to him. Like, there was one guy from the Warthog team who just out-bolted as soon as he saw Craig Charles coming towards him. He's like, I just don't want to deal with this guy. Well... No one would do that to Craig at all. So it's one of those things. Like I think I always felt like the enthusiasm shined through, and obviously because in BattleBots, I presume is the guys who were presenting were also the commentators, weren't they? I think.
Yes, they were.
They were, yeah, they were, because it was thanks to those guys I got put off the first time. So I was kind of hoping like they would stop talking and they'd go to like a commentator, because obviously the commentator for us is the legendary Jonathan Pierce, of course. Some say he's a bit annoying. I mean, I don't know what you guys think.
He has just the right level of enthusiasm for me.
Well, if you can't handle Jonathan Pierce, you can always listen to Stefan Frank's commentary.
Oh, he's the Dutch guy, isn't he?
Oh no, that's Eric Corton.
Stefan Frank is the U.S. guy. He did Extreme Warriors, Nickelodeon, and Grand Champions dub.
Oh, he was enthusiastic quite a bit. I mean, nothing.
I know he gets a lot of hate, but I actually do like him. He kind of sounds like a wrestling announcer, but he does put quite a lot of enthusiasm into his voiceover, and he actually does have a YouTube channel where he shows off like announce work for like movie trailers and commercials and all kinds of stuff, and he's a really talented guy. I think some people just don't give him enough credit for it.
I mean, JP is at heart he's a football commentator, so and even in the world of football he's considered kind of over enthusiastic, because his biggest downfall was while he's enthusiastic about what he's talking about, he never actually notices the small details. Like there was a point my mate Anderson made about in the battle with Terahertz and Sabretooth, I believe. I think it was in the recent series. He said, "Oh look, the axe is coming down from the attack," and the axe just fell down because of gravity because it was broken. But he thought, "Oh, it's attacking," and I was just like, he just doesn't notice the small things. Like he'll say things that aren't true and say things that are just. He just thinks he saw because he's too busy like getting up, getting excited about the fact that Hypnodisc is destroying something. So,
and I just find it amazing how even 20 years later he still has no idea what armament is.
No, he still doesn't.
He also does not know. He also does not know that putting the word ability at the end of a noun does not mean it's capable of flipping or crushing or destroying a robot. It means the robot can easily be flipped or destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, the infamous one was Razor and Squeezability. That was his number one go-to phrase.
Because Razor's just so soft and cuddly.
Razor is the Bailey of Robot Wars.
I mean, what do you think of Jonathan Pierce and Mystrsyko2?
I like I really like how enthusiastic that he is. It's a very natural enthusiasm. You can tell he's doing everything in post sometimes, and that he like already knows what's going to happen because replays and all of that. But I enjoy his commentary. I enjoy the whole like rapid fire sports style commentary. Uh, Getting back to the other presenters, though, it's kind of important to remember what role they were expected to perform on the show, because a lot of the BattleBots guys, they were expected to be comedians first and commentators second. And so I can totally see why people wouldn't like that, but it was also, they were not trying to be Jonathan Pierce.
No, I agree with that. I mean, their roles are vastly different. I think it was just when I first watched it, I was about like 7 or 8 or something. I expected it to be just like the American version of Robot Wars, and it wasn't. So I was just like, as you know, if you're 7, you like don't like something, you just go, no, not watching this. I mean, it's a completely different feel. I mean, it's that feel that both series have. That one's more kind of flashy and one's more kind of with the robots. So it's kind of like there's different feels to it. But I mean, I'm still not the biggest fan of those guys, but I don't really hate them because I just kind of watch it for the robot combat, to be honest with you. But
you made a really good point when you pointed out that BattleBots is kind of going for like a professional boxing kind of thing, because that's literally where they're getting their inspiration from and what they're trying to be, a professional sports show. And by comparison, Robot Wars almost seems like it's pro wrestling. Everything's really flashy and over-the-top characters and that sort of thing.
all right, I mean, it's just one of those observations I noticed where it just feels like, again, it's all. I mean, hell, you've even got a guy counting him out like some kind of like a referee counting out the person as they're knocked out. Like one thing that the Robot Wars failed to have, because we have the button from the judges nowadays where they count out someone who's immobilized 10 seconds in. But as we learned from the Pulsar Ironside 3 match, it doesn't always work. I like the fact there's a physical person there counting down, like, you're out. I quite like that aspect of it. It does make it does add to a lot of showmanship of the show. I mean, the whole show is about showmanship, it feels like. But
the other role that the referees play is they're reminding the competitors of the rules, and like if there's a 30-second hold limit, then they'll be reminding them, okay, you've got to let him go soon. You've got to let him go soon. All right, let go right now, or you're going to get disqualified. And
But I mean, obviously there was that one infamous time though with Biohazard where it didn't really seem to happen.
Yeah, I'm not really.
That was before
sure.
Before the holding rule, where Voltark was holding Biohazard on its lifter the entire time, but they wouldn't let it go.
I mean, this is why we have the ref bot in our series, because the ref bot would usually come in to like not. I mean, obviously before then, if the robots got stuck together, the house robots just randomly come in and maybe attack them or something. Like in the case of one of the worst battles of Series 3, there was a Corporal Punishment versus Alligator, where it just ran on top of each other, and then the whole match was them just stuck on top of each other until the house robots decided to take out Corporal Punishment for some reason.
And the judges said that was a split decision.
Yeah, someone voted that Corporal Punishment won that battle. I find that amazing. I don't know what match they were watching where it wasn't stuck on top of it the entire time, but I mean, actually, that kind of like segues into something that I find. It's the only thing I think we can't really compare Battlebots to, because we don't even have them, is are the house robots. They have had weird roles over the years. Like in the old series, they used to be the kind of barricades in the gauntlet and the trials, and then over time they started becoming the guys who would just finish off a robot when they were immobilized, like throw them into the pit or throw them around a bit. I'll start with the Mystrsyko2 then. What do you think? Do you think the house robots are beneficial, or do you think they just get in the way sometimes?
See, again, this is where the context of the show is important, because in a very sports, boxing, rules-oriented show like BattleBots, it's interfering. It's somebody else has control over what the fight is going, or where the fight is going and what's happening. Whereas in Robot Wars, which is more of a game show, they're just mobile hazards, and it allows a little bit of, well, things are not going very well, we can actually do something about it. I think somebody told me whole purpose of the House Robots originally was to have reoccurring characters on the show to get people interested in it, which it absolutely does. They're fantastic characters to have always on the show, and you don't really have that in BattleBots. It's just the competitors and that's it.
Yeah, I mean they do have their own little personalities, even when they don't really do much. Like, I mean, Circulot's like considered like the big, and actually there's also Mystrsyko2 later on in Series 6, but he's basically the same. Not you. You didn't. It gets confusing for a sec, but I mean, what do you think, Nate, about the House Robots?
Well, again, context is important because, as you said, they started out as just sort of obstacles in the gauntlet, but by season 2, that's when they sort of became a part of the show. Like, they weren't just extra robots. They were more or less what made the show worth watching, because in every battle you had that little thing of, okay, what are the House Robots gonna do? And sometimes their interference was actually very entertaining. You mentioned Series 3 Heat D, when Killalot almost flicked Shell Shock out of the arena.
That was amazing.
Or, it's always satisfying just hearing Dead Metal Saw tearing into a robot. I mean, although at times, you could say that they did too much, and I don't mean like their little parade that they have after the battles where they dispose of the defeated robot. I mean when they just sort of came out for no reason. Like, you're probably going to get to this, and whoever you have on is going to rant all about it, but Series 5 Heat L, Ming versus Terahertz.
Oh, that's a bad one.
Attacks Ming 3 for no good reason.
Yeah, because in the context of this, basically, it was him against Terahertz, and they were just like in the middle of the arena on the arena side wall, and Ming 3 was actually winning because they were crushing on top of Terahertz and actually pinning them down quite well. Then Matilda out of nowhere came from behind and just broke the wheel off it. And
no, it broke its rear end, or like the crushing gears. I don't think it broke its wheels.
I think it hit the wheel actually as well. I think because it disabled it in some of the way line. Basically, it probably knocked the move of Link out at the same time, and it just died. And there was like no reason.
It was definitely the rear end. It didn't touch the wheel.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen Series 5, but all I definitely remember is at least that Matilda definitely knocked them out when they were actually doing all right, and there was no reason why Matilda came out. And there have been other times, like there's also the infamous Sir Chromalot in Series 3. Where the House Robots thought Sir Chromalot was immobilized, and then it carried on moving a bit more, but they kept attacking it. And then it went to that judge's decision, and all the confusion started happening about what are the rules on the show. And it's understandable why there's confusion, because sometimes the House Robots just seem to, especially in Series 2, when you had the PPZ.
Oh god, I was just about to get to that.
The PPZ is the worst thing, possibly one of the worst things in the series, I think, because it meant like you're essentially on a sumo ring the entire time, and if anyone touched like a millimeter of you touched the PPZ, you were pounced on, and you had no, unless you were quick enough or didn't get attacked for some reason, which is very unlikely, you pretty much were out. You were just considered out instantly, and it was always like a massive strategy in Series 2 to push a robot into PPZ and then just let the House Robots maul them, and that was all they had to do. And it was better in Series 3 onwards, where they had their own little areas to stay in. Like, they're in the corners, because the CPZ is a lot more beneficial than the PPZ, but I don't know what you think about that, Brandon, but...
Nah, I like how the House Robots, they do add a lot of character to the show, because it certainly makes it different to BattleBots. Like, with BattleBots, you can tell they are just remote-controlled weird vehicles being driven, but at least with the House Robots on Robot Wars, they add a lot of character. It actually it in a way it almost makes it look like they're sentient when you obviously know they're not. But yes, obviously there are those points where like there were a lot of matches where that they shouldn't have interfered, and I think some teams got a little robbed of their victories in some matches, particularly. I guess I think one of the most obvious examples is Pandemonium versus Napalm.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. They just literally just backed in and then flipped him over, and that was it. There was
Yeah,
there was no. Also, there was also the infamous Panic Attacks Heat in Series 2 where they just held the ramp down and refused to let anyone through no matter what, and it felt like they were just being really cruel for one particular heat for no reason. But
yeah, and I am kind of happy that they're a bit more restrained in the new series. I know a lot of fans are unhappy that they're not getting involved more, but I think that they have done something good with the Rogue House Robot gimmick. So, because the house robots can get involved, but at least it's because of the button that they use. And people say they want to bring the old house robots back, and I'm like, why? These new ones are great. They're just as powerful, if not way more powerful than the old robots. And I remember, and obviously that they tried to add a bit more variety by adding Mystrsyko, Growler, and Cassius Chrome. And for the most part, I thought, because when I first saw Mystrsyko in the New Blood tournament in Extreme 2, those were like the first new episodes of the UK series I watched. And it actually looked genuinely powerful. Like, it just just beat the ever-living hell out of Knight Raider and Maximus, and I'm like, God damn, this thing's a beast. But then when you start looking at all the other robots, like I guess Matilda at that point, even to this day, I consider Matilda the most destructive house robot, because it even shows. But yeah, Mystrsyko's hammer really, like, it was just more for show. Like, it didn't really do much damage, at least physically, but obviously internally it was making a mess of everybody. But at the same time, these things are big, and I believe they're big, they're scary, but I really do think they make good entertainment.
yeah, I'd agree. And one big difference both series have also is the arena layouts, because in Battlebots there are a lot more. Again, it's a very flashy kind of thing. You've got the kill swords that go flying up and send robots flying. You also got the spikes around the arena. You have the you have this. What were the point of those little raising platforms in
The
Battlebot?
hell raises.
Yeah, the hell What was the point of those? 'Cause I didn't really see what they really did.
To trip a robot up, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know. Like, if you're gonna have a floor flipper, just go all out and just have one large panel that just goes whoosh like that.
I think I remember seeing somewhere that the producers or the people that built the arena originally had the idea that robots would jump off of them like a ramp and go Dukes of Hazzard at their opponents, and then literally nobody did.
It's sort of like the Robot Wars equivalent is the arena floor flipper, which is a lot better in the newer series because it fires when a robot lands on it, as opposed to being sort of the end of the sort of let's destroy the losers type, victory type thing. And there were a couple of things in Robot Wars that didn't really make sense. I mean, obviously the most drastic difference, apart from the CPZ and the House Robots, is the pit, because Battlebots doesn't have a pit, whilst Robot Wars does. And in Series 2 and 3, it was just an open pit, apart from the Heat Final. But in Series 4, they randomly did a thing where it'd open after a minute or something, and then Series 5 onwards, you have the pit button. What are your thoughts on the pit, Mystrsyko? Because a lot of people think it's kind of cheap, because some robots would just push the pit button and then, like, Tornado would do it a bit. There was also Tough and Nails would do it in Series 7, where they grab a robot and just put it into the pit, and then that would be their entire strategy.
Or like Foxic in Series 9, just hit the pit button in a tenth of a second.
Yeah.
The pit's interesting, because when you go for BattleBots where they're looking for really minimal influence over the outcome of the fight and they want the robots to prove themselves, the pit kind of seems really cheap in terms of a victory. It's like you're not proving yourself, you're just making it so the other guy can't drive now. Whereas it ends up forcing the lack of a pit forces the robots to have to disable the other one. Because, as they say, if it goes to the judges, then consider it a loss. Whereas Robot Wars, where you have the pit and with things like the lower arena walls, it gives non-destructive weapon types an option to end a fight without going to the judges, which is great for innovation. But again, if you're not going for that direct head-to-head, which is better kind of format, then it's not great for that particular format.
Yeah. What do you think, Brandon, about the pit?
I am a bit mixed on the pit because on one end, I think it is a good way to maybe if there's a robot that isn't quite destructive or just can't keep up with a robot, it gives it a chance to maybe have a comeback victory, like say Bigger Brother got on Hypnodisc. At the same time, sometimes it can get a bit annoying because maybe you'll be winning that match, like I said, and then all of a sudden a robot just hits the pit button and you just go flying right into the pit. And
I mean,
I'm sure it's probably frustrating for a few teams if that happens, because I know Supernova in the last series, it probably would have won that match until it just gyroed out of control and went straight into the hole.
In fairness, that was sort of partially their fault because the robot was sort of out of control in a way that it just went off randomly. But it just happened to be unfortunate. It was facing the pit at the time. But one match that comes to mind for me, I don't know if you remember, it was in Series 7, I believe. Was it? No, so I can't remember if Series 6 or Series 7. It was Tornado's heat. And they were against Incredible, and they also had Terrible in it, and I can't remember the fourth one.
That was Series 6.
That was Series 6, right, yeah. They had Terrible, and I've forgotten the fourth robot. It was already out, I think, by then. And it was Edgehog. That was it. Edgehog had basically died, I think. And then Incredible was sort of not doing very well. It was getting beaten up by Tornado quite badly, and it was pretty lackluster as well. And Terrible was looking like it was going to go through, and at the last moment, Terrible just got pushed into the pit. And it was like, oh, Incredible, the less impressive robot is through by default. And it's like, sometimes it happens with, there are funny instances, though, where some robots will just drive into the pit by accident. Famously, Kilohertz did that in Series 3. Possibly one of the worst... in context, but it was the fact that they didn't have a pit in America, so he just drove in. He got too used to the American circuit, but that was pretty. I mean, another one for me is the Executioner and Shredder did the same thing, and also Disconstructor, lasted about 12 seconds or something because they just drove into the pit after hitting the button. And then, of course, there's Firestorm versus the Morgue, which is. It's one of those. Actually, what are your thoughts on that particular one? Because I'm always quite curious. Does that really does the Morgue does the Morgue situation kind of make it in the pit if it's stuck on the pit, or does it count if it's in the pit?
If you're stuck on the pit and you can't move, I guess you pretty much are declared immobilized, because Firestorm did go into the pit, but Morgue drove over it first and got stuck. So, yeah, if you can't get away from the pit, you're technically immobilized. You're technically in the pit.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a similar situation. It happened a couple of times in Series 3, because Eric versus King Buxton, where King Buxton was stuck on the edge of the pit, and then Eric came in, and then King Buxton was freed, and Eric fell into the pit instead.
That's one of the best pittings I've ever seen.
The funniest one for me was Millian Bug versus Bumblebot, where they just all the aggression and then straight into the pit, and then Bumblebot somehow managed to get through because Millian Bug. It was the problem with Millian Bug's shape, I think. Millian Bug just kind of toppled in, like one part was in, and the rest of it just fell with it. The pit is certainly something. I mean, it has its advantages and disadvantages, but. Again, it sort of gives the people an extra option. Like, there are robots like Tornado that sometimes, if pushing isn't enough, they have to resort to other things. And obviously, there's the infamous Tornado frame.
That's one of those things. Even to this day, people are still complaining about that decision. I mean, social media has really had an effect, I think, on the robot sport. I mean, there's been a lot of controversies between Overhaul, the team getting angry after that delayed hit in Battlebots. There was obviously the Razor versus Pussycat controversy, and recently the whole issue with Behemoth and Cherub. But the Razor versus Tornado controversy has to be hands down one of, if not the most controversial decision. I think maybe in the sport today, because it's like, oh, Tornado was hovering over the pit; they should have been eliminated. But at the same time, I think yes, they were over the pit. They were they couldn't move, but at the same time, I think Razor still had a hold of them. So I think if they had let Tornado go, and Tornado was still over the pit, Tornado would have been declared immobilized. But no, because since Razor still had a hold of them, they Tornado were technically still in it. But yeah, everyone has their own interpretation of it.
It's definitely it's definitely one of those moments. I mean, the only other moment I can think of that outbeats Tornado versus Razor is Storm 2 versus Typhoon 2, because of certain things. I mean,
there was obviously a lot of bullshit surrounding it. Like people, the producers didn't like how Storm 2 wouldn't use its weapon in some of its matches. Even to this day, there are matches where Storm 2 doesn't even use its weapon. Like against Eruption, I didn't see the lifter go up once. But
I think it used it like twice the entire heat, and that was it. But
yeah.
I mean, that kind of leads on to like, because the one thing that Robot Wars seems to have made a lot more clear with some of its problems than Battlebots. I don't know Battlebots as well, obviously, but
there is a bit of controversy again regarding the immovable weapon, or as I like to call it, primary weapon, where there was a decision. It wasn't televised, but it was uploaded online. Where Sawblaze, which is basically a giant dustpan with a saw arm on it, it fought Razorback. No relation to Razor, but basically it was on the offense the entire match. But early on in the fight, Sawblaze's weapon stopped working, but Razorback's drum was still working kinda. It was able to get maybe a couple digs in on the wedge, but it wasn't really doing anything. But Sawblaze was on the offense the entire match, and Razorback really couldn't do anything. And then at the very end, they decided to give the match to Razorback, because Sawblaze's primary weapon stopped working, but Razorback's weapon was still working. So they decided to give the match to Razorback because of that, which just sounds ridiculous.
that's actually quite ridiculous. That I mean, obviously, from Series 7 onwards in Robot Wars, they implemented the active weapon rule that all robots had to have a weapon that could move independently of the robot. Like Stinger, for example, was a thwack bot, but unfortunately, because they had to rely on moving all the time to use their weapon, they were basically barred from Series 7. Even though they are a grand finalist, they weren't allowed in, and it was a similar case with somewhere like Storm 2. That's the whole reason why the producers were sort of on Storm 2, because they didn't use their active weapon at all. And then they were just a ram bot, and then there was multiple times, I mean, later on, where like Storm 2 would be constantly giving them more of a disadvantage because of it.
Hang on, guys, I got a call. Hang on.
Oh, so professional. But I mean, the Robot Wars producers seem to have they probably had 3 controversial things in their lifetime. I think number 1 was the Napalm versus Mortis in Series 2, which they massaged it to make it look like Mortis demanded it. But in reality,
I remember when I did I did a review for my Hardcore Kid show back in 2011, and I wasn't entirely I didn't have all the information regarding the Mortis controversy, but it really did make it look like Rob Knight demanded it.
I mean, even the commentary from JP, we probably just told to say, you know, this is what happened, because he wouldn't have known. So, and then obviously the Storm 2 with the fact that they constantly kept trying to. I mean, there was actually one bit where I think was it Firestorm? It was the
Firestorm match where they didn't use their weapon.
Yeah, it was Firestorm. I think it was it Firestorm or Tornado where they lifted the pit up.
That was the Tornado match.
Yeah, I mean, Mystrsyko2, you'll get to this eventually in Series 7, but there was one bit of a match against Tornado where the pit button was released, Tornado went onto the pit, it lowered, but then they raised it back up again so Tornado could get out, and then made it look like sort of that they got away from it. And then Tornado still lost eventually, but Storm 2 was the fact that they constantly tried to make it look like that Storm 2 could have lost it, and the judges, thankfully, the judges were like, no, they were pretty stubborn about it. It was more the producer's side of it. And there's also
Honestly, I think the same case with Tornado. Yeah, I don't know. Again, there were quite a few matches in Series 7 where either the weapon broke or you really couldn't see it. Because apparently they're supposed to have like a chain flail weapon in the scoop, but
it's a little flywheel and a little disc on it.
half the matches I didn't even see it working. Like the Leveler 2 match, I couldn't see a chain or anything, because I don't know.
It's one of those biases. Like I think because Tornado had been around for so long, it was sort of considered. Maybe it was. I mean, the similar thing happened in Series 9, the most recent series, because you might have noticed that one thing might notice later on that TR2 is not in the series, even though it's a grand finalist, and the reason why is because they apparently didn't change the robot enough. I
thought it was because they arrived late or something.
No, apparently they just didn't get selected. Because apparently the producers didn't really like the look of it, and it's still. I don't want to start talking about things I don't know fully 100%, but there were things behind the scenes. That's the gist of what I've heard apparently, but it's weird considering the fact that there were robots like Behemoth and Terahertz who didn't change that much were still allowed in because there were more favourites, but TR2 weren't allowed in. And the same with Gabriel. Gabriel didn't change at all, yet they weren't allowed in because they didn't change too much, even though they're pretty much one of the fan favourites, really, of the last series because of the way they look. And it's just one of those things. Like it just seems like the producers want both interesting and variety, yet constantly they'll put loads of spinners in the most recent series. So it's one of those things. I don't know how selective it is in Battlebots. I mean, Mystrsyko2, I don't know if you know about anything behind the scenes at all. I don't know. I mean,
the modern Battlebots is not that different than the modern Robot Wars now. I know
okay.
the old competition on Comedy Central used to be a completely open competition. Anybody could show up with anything. I think Season 5.0 had like 500 or 600 robots show up, which I can't imagine how long that would take to run that competition. But the modern show, they have a quota for each kind of weapon type that they want in the show. And like in Season 1 on ABC, the Behemoth guys applied with Behemoth and they were turned down, and they only got in because they made something that was completely unlike anything else that had been accepted at that point.
Wasn't that? Well, was that radioactive?
That was radioactive, yes.
And it didn't. From what I remember seeing of it, it didn't really work that well. From what I remember, it just got destroyed. I think.
To date, their match with Sweet Revenge is like the only match of the new series that hasn't been uploaded to YouTube. And probably because I think what happened was Radioactive hit it 3 times with the axe, and then both robots just broke down.
Ah, fair enough. It's just one of those things. I mean, it's you're gonna get it in both series. Let's face it. I mean, producers seem to be like they have a lot of control over what goes in where. So I guess sometimes they want variety, and sometimes they just want robots to upgrade themselves. And considering they want variety, in Pulsar's heat there were 5 out of 8 of the robots were spinners, which led to a lot of the battles becoming really short. So hopefully they try and improve on it this series and don't put too many of one type of robot in the same heat, or try and exclude robots just because they haven't changed as much, when some robots don't need to change that much at all. Like Gabriel didn't really need to change its design at all, it's perfect as it is. Yeah, it wasn't allowed in because it didn't change, but I mean, obviously they still at least keep in the weird robots like Jellyfish and Miss Nightshade and Crackers and Smash and Worm and all these kind of robots that still are weird enough to on TV. They still make good TV, but
some people forget these robots, they cost a lot of money to put together. Like I think with the robots you have, you have a budget. You were able to get something together, and it looks good. You finally have everything together, and then the next season, the producers say, "Oh, we want you to like update it, like put something together, maybe put another flipper or an axe on it or something." And it's like, a lot of this stuff takes a lot more money. Like sometimes these teams they have their bots built, and usually they have to use their money to maybe get spare parts or something. And sometimes it's something that you really can't budget, or sometimes it's something that's really expensive. And I don't know.
Or it just takes time sometimes.
Yeah, like with PP3D, Gary Cairns, he had to start a Kickstarter campaign just to completely update PP3D.
And there are some robots like Storm 2 and the King Bee guys who I think they've applied for Series 10 but took a break for Series 9 because the amount of time they had was so small that they couldn't really make the updates necessarily, so they had to skip a series and go to Series 10. And PP3D and Worm are also doing the same thing. They're not. I think there's also a few. I think actually there's some talk. I think I heard Pulsar might not be in next series either. I think
also Supernova, but I think that's because they have personal commitments.
Actually, and I think I heard somewhere Eruption, but I'm not confirmed about that. I don't think that one, but I think it was Pulsar, the one I was thinking about. Because I think because obviously looking at how Pulsar performed this series, they need to upgrade it in different ways, and sometimes that amount of time just isn't enough. Because I think it's like May or July something they're filming this year. So
yeah, it's May.
Yeah, that's a very short amount of time. That's only about a month away. And the application only ended at like the end of March, so it's
like with events like Battlebots and Robo games and whatnot, they at least come once a year, so you have all the time you want. But BBC, they're just pushing series out and just only like 6 months at a time, and the teams just aren't ready.
It's true, and it's just one of those things where sometimes they just have to skip it or not do anything at all. And I mean, it's good for getting series out, but at the same time, there are some robots like imagine Apollo. The Apollo guys would have definitely improved their robot a lot more if they'd had more time between the series. I'm not saying Apollo was like bad in this series, but they could have done a lot more to it. Like I think they just changed the armor and some of the internals. I think the robot was virtually identical, and in case of Behemoth and Terror, they couldn't really change much at all because again of the time limits and also the robot's sort of made as it is. But it's just one of those time things, really. And the last thing on my list I need to talk about is the judging criteria of each series. Because, from what I've heard, Robot Wars, they were making it up as they went along a lot of the time. In the earlier series, anyway. Because obviously, in Robot Wars, we have style, control, damage, and aggression.
There used to be style, now it's just aggression, damage, and
control. Yeah, I mean, style. I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but I still don't really understand what style is.
I would prefer. Can I go first?
Yeah, sure, go.
And we lost Brandon.
Oh, Karen, you might get back on.
All right. So anyway, let's go. Let's get started. Okay, yes.
Style.
I personally prefer what Anderson said in one of Sam's heats, in that instead of style, they should have defense instead. But that's just me. But yeah, I can't really. I guess like style is just simply looking flashy and not more, which it just baffles me because a robot like Gabriel or Razor or even TR2 are going to win on style, obviously, against something like, say, Rusty or Heavy Metal.
Yeah.
I can see why they got rid of it, because it just doesn't really have any meaning.
It's the most ambiguous of the four. I mean, damage makes sense, control you can understand, aggression can be at least seen, but... I mean, what do you think, Mystrsyko? I mean, what do you think really style meant?
I have not got a single clue what style was supposed to mean, because in some cases it seems to be robots showing off features that they have, like self-righting mechanisms or whatever it might be, and in some cases it just seems to be whichever robot looks the nicest. Yeah. I can't really understand what it's supposed to be, and because it's so ambiguous, it could mean different things to so many different things to so many different people, and
it's a very odd one, to say the least. I mean, it's probably why they dropped it for the new series, to be honest with you, because it just makes no sense. I mean, in Battlebots, whatever, you have the sort of the point system, which to me it makes a lot more sense, because when you see the points, you can see exactly where the robots gained all their points from, and it's more kind of structured. Like, you got a number of hits with your weapon, or you did, so and so. I mean, I think you explained it better than me on your recent live review of the point system in Battlebots, because it makes much more sense there than Robots. I mean, nowadays it's a lot better. Like they I think the biggest problem it came down to was the fact that in the classic series they didn't have the ability to play back the battles. Whilst nowadays in the rebooted series they have the ability to watch back the battles and take as much time as they need to, seeing if the robots are mobilized first. And I think it's actually made decisions a bit fairer. Granted, some people still find them controversial, but there's always going to be people find things controversial anyway. So what are you gonna do? But
I think a lot of the where the audience finds it controversial comes from the fact that they can't see what the judges did to reach their decision. You pointed out BattleBots had the point system. Even the modern show has a point system, even though they just say, which 3 judges voted for which robot. They come to that conclusion by assigning points on their card. And in Robot Wars, you never once hear how the judges came to their decision and which robots got which points in which categories. And I think that's a big part of it, at least from the controversy standpoint.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the good thing about the modern Robot Wars is that you actually can interact with these judges on Twitter. I mean, Noel Shark is on Twitter quite a lot, and he's able to talk about certain decisions and all that. I mean, obviously he can't go about who voted for what, but he can at least try and rationalize why some robots won, and I kind of like that because it's a lot more interactive nowadays, and it just gives that kind of that gives it a bit more I guess more rationality behind the decisions, as I said. But yeah, I mean both systems have their advantages, disadvantages, but at least we can both agree that Brandon's back.
What happened?
I don't know. You just went.
We're just talking about the judges' decisions.
It was more about the criteria. I mean, obviously, what do you think about the? We were just talking about style, obviously, before you went. What do you think of style, just quickly?
I don't even know what classifies as style in Robot Wars. Maybe either through design or maybe with the way a robot performs in a match. I think I remember that Judge Shred Mute match, and I'm thinking, I think Mute might have won that match completely on style, because Control, it would keep doing somersaults and couldn't really do anything. Damage, it got maybe 1 or 2 flips in on Judge Shred, and Aggression, I don't know, would you consider doing a bunch of somersaults aggression?
Not really. I mean, actually, in the case of that specific battle, there was a bit that was actually cut out from the editing. There was a bit where Mute was actually doing better than Judge Shred, but they didn't edit. I mean, this is also one of the things that you have to take into account as well, is how it's edited. Because there are some matches where, in the case of Demolition Demon versus Napalm, we haven't seen the entire battle. So there are some bits.
That's one thing that I think BattleBots has over Robot Wars, is that it at least shows the matches for the most part in raw form. Like with Robot Wars, they just show the best bits. They take out entire segments of matches, because obviously the matches are 5 minutes long, and most of the time they only show maybe 2 minutes or sometimes only 1 minute of fighting. And I think in the new series it's kind of, I would argue that it's worse, because now they're just taking out the bits, the after bits, particularly when the house robots attack, because I've seen live footage online where they show maybe Sir Kill-A-Lot pitting Foxic or whatnot, and they don't show it on TV. So far, for the most part, there have only been 2 televised pittings on TV. One was when Heavy Metal pushed Mr. Speed Squared in the pit, and the other was when Crackers pushed Charles the Cheese into the pit.
The little cluster bot. Yeah, it's kind of weird. The pit has become a little bit less important because a lot of the robots are getting more and more, I guess, refined in a way. But yeah, the judging criteria. I mean, it's all about editing as well, taking into account, because we don't see the entire match sometimes, and obviously the judges back in the day didn't have the ability to replay stuff as much, so they sort of had to go on what they saw. And as far as I'm aware, there has only been one judge's decision in Robot Wars history that actually got the team to try and overrule the decision. That was Daisy Chopper, wasn't it? I think it was Daisy Chopper against Griffin. Apart
I
from,
can say I call that match Diet Biohazard versus Diet Nightmare.
and both are rubbish. So it didn't. I mean, that battle was boring anyway. But it's the fact that they thought they'd won somehow, even though they weren't moving properly. But I mean, it's kind of weird. I've seen some matches. I thought to myself, you could probably disagree with that. Like for example, Mazakari in Mortis's battle, how they Iron Ore was just not working yet for some reason. They were considered mobile for some reason. I still don't really understand that one.
Hey guys, yeah, well, we're kind of talking about the battles here, and unfortunately, I actually have to get going because I've got work. But we also have to talk about how many fights you got in each episode because you talked about in Battlebots it had so much padding in each episode, and yet in like 20 minutes of Battlebots you only got 2 fights. And even when the show went to an hour, you only got 4 fights. That's like 1 fight every 10 minutes. Where in a 45-minute episode of Robot Wars, you get 7 fights in about less than an hour. And granted, not all the fights are going to be good. I mean, you're going to get to some really bad heats right now when your reviews, James.
Yep.
But you at least saw everything, even if the fights were edited where they kind of had to show the best bits, because, let's be honest, I don't want to see 2 robots pushing each other forever, although they couldn't get around that in the New Blood, but that's besides the point. But, it's a case of quantity versus quality, because Battlebots, they showed you what the producers felt were the best fights on the show. Whereas in Robot Wars, they showed you everything, no matter how good or bad it was.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, sometimes quantity over quality of Robot Wars, but at the end of the day, we still managed to have all the talking and still get all the battles. And the only times it dragged was when you're watching the grand finals, where they'd show they go through the entire series, then they go through all the awards, then they go through how these robots made it to the grand finals, showing same footage sometimes, and then you watch
padding.
So much padding. But yeah, I mean, I think we've actually covered everything. I think, yeah. It was even producer bullshit. We covered everything. Great. Mm-hmm. So, I will start with Mystrsyko2 then. Overall, then, what would you say is the best thing about BattleBots and the best thing about Robot Wars? Would you say?
Probably the best thing about BattleBots is, I would say, over-the-top spectacle when it happens. It's the best machines that money can buy and that engineers can make being put head-to-head with no or minimal bullshit and see what happens. And probably the best part about Robot Wars is it's very kid-friendly, very beginner-friendly, and has a lot of interesting characters, particularly with the house robots. It's something that gets you into the sport. And in a way, BattleBots is the thing. If you want to take it super seriously as a profession, then you go to BattleBots.
Huh, I agree with that. What about you then, Nate?
Well, if you ask my parents, because I've only shown them the revivals of BattleBots and Robot Wars, they'll obviously say Robot Wars. And I think, whereas I agree with Mystrsyko2 in that BattleBots was a greater spectacle in terms of, the fights and the presentation. But I feel that I prefer Robot Wars because it's just the right amount of spectacle. Because BattleBots, I feel, is a case of too much of a good thing. They're trying to take this whole sport of robot combat a little too seriously when, let's be honest, robot combat is just a glorified hobby. But whereas Robot Wars, you got a good sense of, how do I put this? Everything is just better pacing. I mean, other than the finals, where it was just all padding in the classic series. The newer ones, they do a better job. Nothing feels like it drags on. You get the right balance of people talking and action in the arena. And in the newer series, it's even better because you get to know the teams as the show goes along.
Yeah, I can see that.
And plus, you've got the educational side. I feel that its kid-friendly presentation actually helps it more than BattleBot. more than BattleBots, because BattleBots is more of a prime time spectacle, whereas Robot Wars can be enjoyed by kids and adults.
Yeah, I can see that. They definitely have different feels. Brandon, any final thoughts?
Well, in a way, I think both shows that they have their advantages and their disadvantages over one another. With BattleBots, it seems to be more in terms of like the people watch it basically as a sport. Like, it does have entertainment value to it. I think it has more of a destructive nature to it. I mean, when you look at robots like Tombstone or Minotaur or whoever, and Robot Wars, it's more. But Robot Wars, while it doesn't have the same kind of destructive capacity as BattleBots does, at least not yet. It like Nate said, it has better pacing. It has a lot more matches. And I think that seems to be the same issue that I think plagued the original BattleBots was, again, too much talking, not enough matches. But and if I were to decide which show do I like better, BattleBots or Robot Wars, I'd have to say Robot Wars because I grew up with it. I really enjoy seeing like the house robots, and I look at some of the teams, and I actually recognize a few people, and or actually I recognize a few people in BattleBots as well because some of them I know personally. But yeah, but I think Robot Wars, yeah, it does have a lot more creative designs, and some of the matches do go longer, at least for the most part. But yeah, I still enjoy it. If I were to choose which show I'd go on though, it would have to be BattleBots because one, I'll be with some teams that I do know, and number two, I think I don't know. It's just it's just a cool experience because like I've been to a few events, but I always enjoy competing for the experience and to have fun and see the matches, and it's a good time.
I mean, the biggest advantage that BattleBots has for me is just the over the top flair it has. Like, it's very kind of sports. We're gonna watch like a wrestling match or a boxing match. Let's just get these two robots in and fight them. You get a lot of destruction. We also get a lot of like impact. You get a lot of really really destructive and some in the old series particularly a lot more creative robots. But in Robot Wars, I like more the sort of kind of home feel it has, where like you can enter pretty much anything and see what happens. And there's definitely more of a community. They show more of the behind the scenes in the new series, particularly. You see more of a community in the pits than you do in BattleBots. So it's one. I mean, there's a whole thing why we have a sportsmanship award is because there's sort of that kind of community feel, and all the robots, especially Chomp a lot last series, everyone was willing to come and help it out the way any way they could. So that's one thing I liked about. I mean, I'll say if I had to enter a series, I probably would enter Robot Wars, mainly because A, it's easy to get to, but B, is the fact that I could probably enter something that's under like £500 and still have a good chance. But
Yeah.
that's just me though. But I think I think we've covered everything. So so thank you once again for all three of you to join me because trying to time the schedules for all the different time zones or something, but we got there, and
I can finally get to work on time.
you get to work.
Yeah, me too.
So with that, thank you, Brandon.
Hey,
Thank
good
you,
being here.
thank you, Nate,
The pleasure's all mine, Jim.
and thank you, Mystrsyko2.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're welcome, and so I'll see. I'll watch the videos later on, of course, and bye.
Bye.
Cease.
Goodbye, everybody.